What does the holy obsess about? One day, while the holy was doing the normal stuff like dividing the night from the day, and the heaven from the earth, and the light of the sun from the darkness of a shadow, something unusually interesting happened. The holy formed into an isolated human and worshipped a demon called the incurable illness, filling up an empty jar. The incurable illness was a diagnostic label issued by the very important high priest of temporal witchcraft, as in a licensed physician. When the physician cast a spell to curse the human resource with possession by an incurable demon, that was not the activity of the holy. That was because the priest had previously been possessed by an unholy demon named arrogance, which is something that is obviously outside of the influence of the Almighty, who's also the creator of everything and all-powerful. So, the unholy arrogance possessed the unholy witch who cast a spell to curse the human resource with demonic possession by a long list of incurable diagnostic labels. The demon of anemia sucked the iron out of the victim, while another demon, named scurvy, sucked out the vitamin C. Rickets sucked out the vitamin D. Goiter sucked out the iodine. Hypothyroidism interfered with the functioning of the thyroid gland, which sucked out several other important vampires right from the neck of the holy human resource, who is either the victim or the hero in our story, but I'm just not sure which yet. Anyway, all of that was just the beginning of the tortures inflicted on the one damned to hell. Next, the diagnostic label of arthritis was applied to the empty jar, causing the jar to be filled with inflamed joints. Then the label of demonic hypertension was stuck right under the other label, causing a sudden increase in the blood pressure of the empty jar. Finally, the words incurable autism were written under the words anemia, written by the demonic priest of modern paranoia, causing the autistic jar to have a sudden dramatic reduction in cognitive functionality and social skills, plus increased irritability, neurological inflammation, and increased sensitivity to things like human touch. Don't touch me! What does the Almighty fear? So all of this was very frightening to the empty jar full of anemia and arthritis and so on. The jar was sincerely terrified, which is the best way to be terrified. The jar was sincerely terrified by these labels for the various effects, like rising blood pressure and declining levels of iron in the blood. Like any other believer in the religion of demon worship would do, the jar focused on those labels and worshipped those effects as demons that were possessing the jar and causing, hell. Naturally, the jar fought against the effects valiantly by taking some medications that the high priest said might peel the labels off of the jar, or even blur out the letters of the word autism on the label, like smudge the ink. Finally, after 3 surgeries to remove the anemia that was causing the reduced levels of iron, the jar began to get really worried. So the jar asked the Almighty for a miracle. "Please help me find a cure for anemia," said the jar. The Almighty suddenly appeared, crawling out of the chimney, wearing a sexy red suit and sporting a big white beard. "Listen to me. I know what I'm talking about here. Your problem is not the effect of anemia," said the Almighty. Anemia is just a label for an effect. Your problem is that you're either not eating enough iron, or, even more likely, that your body is having trouble processing the iron that you do eat. Tell me more, said the empty jar, full of autism and anemia and arthritis. You are clearly crazy and deluded, and you obviously are not the real Almighty because there's no such thing. But I'm still quite curious, just in case you're far more intelligent than the average high priest of demon-worshipping witchcraft. So go on. Well, said the Almighty Santa Claus, if you are a good jar and avoid bad behaviors that reduce your ability to process iron, while you also do a lot of good behaviors that improve your ability to process iron, then I promise to give you a big reward when I'm reborn in the near future. Okay? Does that sound good so far? Yeah, sure, said the jar. Get to the point, though, okay? I have some important TV shows to watch, and this is really cutting into my schedule of whining about my incurable chronic fatigue from exhausting myself by criticizing those 3 politicians who are the evil ones, who think of government as having the right to use violence, which really just pisses me off, right? Anyway, what were you saying about the things that help my digestive system to assimilate iron? Ho, 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 Santa continued. Slow down there. You sure are a disrespectful punk sometimes, but because the Almighty is creating this entire dialogue, I have no choice but to dance according to the puppet strings pulled by the Almighty. So, here is my advice to you, if you are ready. After a long pause, Santa winked and then said, what I would do if I was you is consult with someone who studies health, like who asks, how do animals maintain health? Like, how do all animals, not just humans, create a well-functioning system? Forget about the incurable demon of anemia for a moment. Focus instead on the healthy system and how it uses iron. Does it need electrons to use iron? Does it need zinc? Does it need iodine? If so, then be sure to find the ways that organisms have been getting those things for the last few billion years, like through diet or through their skin while swimming in the mineral-rich ocean waters. Oh, and there's more, said the Almighty Santa. Also, if you have anything blocking the use of iron, such as too much acidity from not connecting electromagnetically to the earth more often, then address the deficiency of iron, of electrons by getting access to whatever will provide you electrons and thus reduce the acidity. By the way, you do know that acidity is just a way of measuring the relative abundance or deficiency of electrons, right? I don't want you to panic about the word acidity. I don't want you to panic about the word acidity and then worship it like one of those ignorant licensed physicians. Learn what the word acidity means if you're paranoid about your ignorance of what it means. Just learn about it. Learn exactly what it measures. Then notice what the measurements are and act accordingly once it's, after you measure it. In other words, you can stop giving so much attention to the ignorant language of desperately arrogant physicians who are operating in a delusional paranoia about the incurable demon of anemia. They often have no idea what they're doing, and they're terrified that people will find that out. The more terrified they are, the more arrogant they are. So beware of taking their arrogance personally. They're just like a panicking dog suffering from rabies. By the way, rabies is a real physical presence, a real demon, an actual causal force. However, anemia is not. It is just a label for the absence of some normal functionality. It's just a name for an effect or a symptom. It has no physical power. For instance, if you shout the word anemia at a bird, the bird does not worship the word and worry about their health. You can only worship the word in a delusion of imprecise idolatry because you understand language in general. If you didn't understand language, you wouldn't be able to worship the word anemia in a delusion of imprecise idolatry. I've found, by the way, that most idolatry is imprecise. It's just like missing the mark, like, a mistake, a sin, that kind of thing. People make presumptions, and they might be slightly inaccurate or completely inaccurate. Anyway, only those who can understand language can worship a particular word in a delusion of panic or whatever. So, maybe you've been very confused about language. And maybe occasionally you'll find that you have an experience of frustration or resentment or panic or something because you've been confused for a while, and then you realize, wow, I'm not getting the results that I expected. I'm frustrated. I must have some underlying confusion in the background that I haven't really explored. Anyway, that's about frustration. And we don't need to really get into that right now. Let me make something very clear to you. You are a very special empty jar to me. I love you even more than I love a mere bird. We were just talking about the birds who aren't even able to understand language, so they can't even worship the demon of incurable anemia and worry and agonize over how to deal with the anemia. Anyway, let me make something very clear to you. I love you even more than I love a mere bird, which may not be true, but it feels good for you, right? So anyway, do not worry about anemic birds or rabid dogs or anything else. Relax, because everything is going according to my design. When I cause you to relax now, that could even be better for your health than worshiping mainstream demons in a panic of delusional paranoia. Relax away from the idea that a demon named anemia ever had any power over you. It did not. I, Santa Claus, am the single almighty power which creates iron and anemia and rabies and demon-worshipping priests. All that I have created in your experience was for your training. Everything that I created in your experience was for your training, for your personal development. I was just reminding you of your source. And you still may have much to learn. I am the cause of all things. You are only a branching of me. Your blood is my blood. My blood is your blood. Your iron is mine too. Your body is my body. There's no part of you that is not me because I'm an all-inclusive category in language. So there's nothing outside of me. There's nothing about you that's not my creation. Your life is my life. Your words are my words. I invented every word and every language, including any phrases or words that you ever make up in the future. See, that will be me making them up through you. You're like my instrument, my facet, one of my forms, one of my deputies. So what if the Almighty panics? So the jar was very relaxed to learn all these ridiculous lessons. Nevertheless, the jar eventually panicked over the thought that there are temporal governments that enforce temporal laws. In a guilty shame of panicking paranoia, the jar said to no one in particular, "But what if I personally do not save humanity from the existence of temporal governments by tomorrow morning? Some of these governments not only do things that are inconsistent with their words, but use violence, which scares me. And they should not do anything that I do not expect, because that is implicitly disrespectful of my exclusive divine authority. Why don't those government leaders do what they should do, which is to stop everything else, schedule an appointment to come and visit me personally, and then take as long as it takes to teach me to understand the one thing that I really need to desperately agonize about right now. How can I get into heaven in the future and escape from an eternal hell of being punished with paranoia and panic and agonizing and confusion and arrogance and disappointment and expectations and frustration and all these contrasting categories in language, and the day got destroyed by the night, and the night destroys the day, and there was 24 hours that were unaccounted for. It was really very important. Anyway, by saying all of that, the empty jar full of demonic, and by saying that, the empty jar full of demonic labels with incurable words like anemia condemned itself to an eternity of torture. I know, right? The foolish jar continued saying, it probably should have stopped by now, but it continued saying, I will forever pretend to be frightened of the words of demon-worshipping high priests. I will also pretend to insist that I am not in the realm of the holy now, but that I need to do something in particular in order for my ego to avoid going to hell when my body dies. I need some kind of ritual for salvation. I need to obsess over it. I need to argue with people about it. I've got a lot of free time and nothing better to do. I need to identify a particular fixation so I can practice some idolatry. Anyway, because, if God alone is my Savior, then I should probably put some blocks between me and God. We got to have some rituals, we got to have some stages you got to go through, because who wants to be saved, already? I mean, it's not a very interesting story, is it? It's like we need a little bit more drama and tragedy and victory over all odds and stuff, right? Well, anyway, so that's when the empty jar almost forgot to add the most important thing ever. I also need some kind of a specific program to follow so that I can become healthy in the future. I need to agonize over my health now in order to eventually enjoy my life. How am I ever going to relax if I do not first find a cure for my incurable paranoia? Also, what's the best method to stop panicking? Is there only one right way to produce agony by agonizing? Or are all of the behavioral patterns of agonizing equally intelligent and spiritually advanced? Next, which language is the best one, as in God's favorite? Which word is best? Which letter is best? Which form of perfectionism is the very best? Who knows the answers to these very important questions? What is the holy law that is eternal and cannot be broken, in contrast to laws that are temporal and can be revised or revoked? I have no idea. This is an absolute tragedy. This is a terrible disgrace. This is a crying shame. I insist hysterically that I am quite justified in my tantrum because I blame someone else very sincerely for my practice of the behavior of tantrum. They did this to me. Crucify the villain that I vilify. Torture the demon that I demonize. Destroy the opponent that I oppose. Suddenly, Santa Claus reached over to the empty jar full of incurable demons and picked it up, shook it really hard so that all of the labels inside of it were mixed up very well, so as to be fair. and then pulled out one word in the raffle drawing to find out what diagnostic label was the very worst or very best or something like that. Suddenly, everyone was very happy. Then, because the contest was finally over and there was a clear winner. The winning slip of paper said the following. Yes, speaking out loud right there in front of everyone. Please listen very closely because your very life depends on it. You have a deathly serious medical problem which is genetic and has been possessing your family for many generations, causing you to question the very existence of reverse psychological warfare. Yes, you have a case of incurable hypochondria. Get over it.